Okay, here we go. So the Rabbi Yonatan asks a very good kasha on last week's parsha. And he asks, why is it necessary for them to, for the Bnei Levi, for Shimon and Levi, the Bnei Yaakov, to demand that the peoples of Shechem malad themselves? They were very powerful people. They could have wiped out Shechem without that. So why did they ask them to malad themselves? Zok Rabbi Yonatan Haposhet hu Kadesh lo yitfu haknainim es dama mehem, so that CNN shouldn't condemn them. Kananim is like CNN. They shouldn't condemn them, ganging up on them that you're brutal murderers, you're violent, you wipe out a city. Al kain bikshu mehem alamu. First become Jews, then kain hema b'nei Yisrael kamoyam. Just like them. If they're Jewish, no one cares. No one gives a damn if you destroy them. That's the cheshbon. Is that not awesome? You heard what I said? Why did Shimon and Levi, why did Shimon and Levi have to have Shechem Mala? They were so powerful, they could have wiped out Shechem without that. The Torah says they were afraid that they would be attacked by the world for being a violent, brutal, barbaric cult of killing out a whole city. But if they become Jews, they Mala, nobody cares about them. Hafla fella. It's amazing.
How does that make them Jews? They didn't reject Avodah Zarah. That wasn't demanded of them. They got a bris milah, like Esav got a bris milah, like Yishmael got a bris milah.
But they thought maybe it was a bris. People would think they're Jewish. But it just goes to show that it was no different back then than it is now. Jews don't matter. And that's what the world's still tumbling about today. How are you talking all of these human rights organizations all around the world that would freak out if women were abused? And not a word, not a word. You heard what Netanyahu said. Where the hell are you? He's right. He's right. Netanyahu made a public speech. All these human rights organizations, UN, where the hell are you? You scream against violations of women's rights, and when it's Jewish women, no problem, not a muk said. Okay, let's see the Halakha Gemara. So yesterday we learned a very cryptic brisa that we need explanation on. So let's start from Omar Mar, where the Gemara starts analyzing the brisa. Omar Mar, Machre Machre. So let's, we should really run through the brisa again, otherwise we're not going to know what he's talking about. Yeah, so I'm not going to start. I'm just going to read the first line. Tanur Rabban, short tam shehizik. A short tam did damage, where the nizik collects chati nezek migufay. Oh, we stopped the Tanur Rabban. Oh, we didn't get down to the two dots of Amar. Oh, okay. So then we'll learn properly inside. Tanur Rabban, short tam shehizik. But there was no psak din yet. Nevertheless, the halach is machre. Therefore, machre. If the mazik sold it, it's sold. In other words, at first glance, we'll see the explanation in the Gemara, but at first glance means now the nizik can no longer collect from it. It's sold. Hekdesh mukdash. If he made it hekdesh, it's hekdesh. Shachtoi v'nosna b'matana. Either he shachted it and now it's meat, or v'nosna b'matana, or he gave it away to somebody else. Masha also. We're going to have to understand what this means. Mishamad Bedin, if he did the same thing after Hamad Bedin, after Bezdin already paskined that this ox has to be collected from to pay the damages that it did, then Machar Einay Machar, Hikdisha Einay Mukdash. And Shachta V'nasta B'matana also Veloit. Now, we have a new case. Kidnu Balei Choybois V'hikbicha. What happened if there was an ox and it did damage, and now the nizik wants to collect from this ox, but this mazik was also a loiva, he also owed money, and his creditor came and seized that ox. It doesn't matter if this mazik was owing the money even before the damage occurred, so the balchoiv, his lien came first. Or even if the lien of the balchoiv came after the shibud to the nizik, because the animal had already shtoist, loy asu v'loy klum. The seizing of the malva is useless. In other words, the nizik can take it away from the malva, because there's something unique about a shor tam that damages, that its guf is responsible to pay those damages. What about an amud? Amud, the payment that the mazik owes the nizik is completely unrelated to the animal. It's only by a short time where the Torah connects payment to the animal. Mud, it's just a liability from the person, the owner of the animal. So mud shezik ben shamad bedin ben shaloyam bedin. Machray machar ikdeshi mukdesh shachta v'nostam b'matana mashas also because I have no the I as the nizik have no direct connection to the animal that did the damage. Kadu balachavzik bia ben chavat shlohizik and hizik ashlechav mashas also l'vishayin mishtalim ela min haliyah. So now we're going to break the brayso down. Amamar machray machar. This is koydem amad bedin by a short time. So what does that mean? It means l'redaya, meaning even though it's meshubit to pay, even though it's meshubit to pay the nizik, and the nizik therefore has a right to seize it, as we learned earlier. Sai according to Rabbi Kiva that the nizik owns the animal. Sai according to Rabbi Shmuel that the animal is meshubit to the nizik, he gets to seize it back. So what does mocher mean? L'redaya, meaning even though I seize it back from the lokeach, I can't ask the lokeach to pay me for the use of the animal until I seized it. Hekdeshay hekdesh, hekdeshay mukdish. Why is it hekdeshay mukdish? If you want to learn according to Rabbi Kiva, where it belongs to the nizik, how could the hekdesh of the mazik work? Mishum Rabavo. Once again, we have a Rabavo's svara that says if the mazik would just go, if the nizik would just go and take it from hekdesh, because it could belong to the nizik, it will look, people will think that you can just go to hekdesh and take stuff without paying for it. Rabbi said, throw him a couple of pennies. I understand if the mazik gave the animal away as a gift. And it means the redaya, because just like if he sold it, the nizik can seize it back, but the lokeach doesn't have to pay for the use that it had from the animal until the nizik seized it. That would be the same thing with someone who received it as a gift. I don't understand. What do you mean, Masha Asa Asay? So it's dead now. But why can't the nizik collect from the meat? Meat has value as well, and let him recoup his damages by seizing the meat. Laisi, Bilishtal, and Mibasari. The Tanya we learned, Chai. Ainly Elachai. We would think only if the animal that was the mazik is alive, can the nizik collect from that animal. Shachtai minayin. How do we know if it was geshachten? How do we know that the nizik can still collect from the meat? Tamud leimer u'machar as a shar mikol makar. Whatever condition the shar is in, it can be sold and we can extract money value from it to pay back the nizik. I don't know how it was in those days where animals had great value to the work in fields, but today I think a shechted animal is probably worth more than a live animal, right? Today a shechted animal is worth more, and that's because live animals aren't used to plow fields, right? We have machines now, so they're primarily raised for their beef, but in those days it wasn't like that. Rav Shizbi said, so the problem here is, why is the Gemara saying, why is the Bride saying, Mashas Asay, it does not release the shibud on this meat from paying back the nizik. So when you shecht it, it becomes worth less in those days. So therefore, does the nizik have the right to go to the mazik? You shechted it. I could have collected $500 out of this ox, but now that you shechted it, the meat's only worth $400. You have to pay me that $100. Unfortunately, the nizik loses that $100. So you're telling me, in essence, when I shech an ox that's meshubed to you, why would it be any different than, let's say, you're a malva and Moshe Pipik owes you $1 million, and Moshe Pipik has a field that's worth $1 million, and you're going to be able to collect from it. I go with a bulldozer and I destroy the field. I dig holes in it. I mess it up. So I'm mazik something that was meshubah to you. Clearly, that's exactly the case of me shechting an animal that was meshubah to you, and it loses value. And what are we saying? What we're saying is the person who shechted that animal, who was mazik, the item that I was going to collect from, he walks free and clear. He doesn't know me. He doesn't have to pay me for it. I'm sorry? Where is he improving it?
Fuel is just destroying, reshuffling the animal.
That's called if you're decreasing it in value, that's not an improvement.
Are we talking about Leoma?
We're speaking right now, right?
So it's not really Meshubit.
No, so this is a milvak shuva b'toyer. This is meshubit immediately.
Why is it Pele and dinner?
We didn't. I mean, we have to learn. We'll have to learn the rest of the price. So we have to see what time Montevin does. But I think the items that we're going through are the halachas that apply. Like, what are we discussing? We're discussing masha asa, right? And it's by lo yamad b'din. By lo yamad b'din. No, because we learned, according to Rabbi Shmuel, there's a special shibud that was placed on this animal. Right? We learned, and we also learned that normally, if you make an apoitiki of an animal and you sell it, the malva can't collect. So the Gemara said yesterday, because there's no coil on a regular animal that becomes an apoitiki. But an animal that's a nakrin, everybody knows about. So therefore, it's an apoitiki, and therefore there's a shibud, and therefore you actually can go and collect it from the lakeach. So here you're a mazik mashibud. So Frekter of Honore de Bishua, are you telling me Zoyse Meres Hamazik Shibude Shakaveri Potter? Is that what you're telling me? Pshita. That's Pashit. Why do I need you to tell me this halacha? So I think I'm reading this wrong. It's not. I read it completely wrong. Amar Afuna b'nichusa. Amar Afuna b'Bishua Zoyse Meres. We can extract from this brisa that says that the mazik is not liable with the pchas shchita. And it's too bad for the nizik that what he's collecting from is worth less. Now he cannot get his full value. I need Reb Huna Berei Rabbi Shua to tell me that you learned this out of this brisa. It's Pashit. Pshita is Rashi de Mehacha Shamin law. But I remember Reb Huna. I didn't need Reb Huna to tell me that from here I learned that Mazik Shibudish Shachaveri is Potter. It's jumping right out at me. It's Pashit. Right? It's not a chiddush that you see that from there. That's exactly what that is. There's a difference. Ma'udetema, you know why in our brisa the mazik is potter for shechting the animal? Hasamu the amerle, the mazik will tell the nizik, loy chasarticha v'lamidi. I really didn't do anything to this animal. The amerle zika ba'almu deshakliminach. I took out its ruach. I took its life away, but I didn't change anything. So therefore, I've modified it less. I didn't make a physical change. But when you're talking about destroying a field, l'chayiv, maybe that's even worse. Maybe that mazik shivuda should be chayiv. No, this is also called damaging. And if this case the mazik is potter from that loss due to the shchita, so to anybody who damages a field that's meshubed to a malva will not have to pay. Frek the Gemara, but Hanami Rabba Amar. Rabba says this. So you're going to ask the question. So just because Rabba said it, Rav Huna can't say it? So Rashi says here, Abambadik Ichadish. Look at Rashi over here. Ha Nami Rabba Amar, the Amar Rabba. Rabba Adam Chashav Haya. Rabba was Adam Chashav. When Adam Chashav, going Rav or Rabba, Parchinan, Ki Iluk Siv Mishnah Bebraisa. If Rav or Rabba said something, then any other Amar who says it will ask him, why do you need to say it for? Rabba said it already. That's not bad. So Rab and Rav, Rashi just gave them a big promotion. Right? They're considered they're considered Adam Chashiv, and if they said something, it has a stature as if it was stated by a Tana, and therefore we will ask on anybody else who says that, why don't you just rely on Rav or Rabba? Hanami Rabba Amar, the Amar Rabba, Hasayev Shtarais of Shel Chaveri. What if you burn your friend's stars? That's also like being mazik yeshibud. Potter, you're going to be potter. Zot Gemara, it's not a riot from there. Ma'udetema. I didn't actually damage your shibud. I burnt up your paper, which maybe represents your shibud, but I didn't really do anything. But maybe from Rabba's halacha, I would think that if you were chayver bari shichan the where you shichan the maris because that's much worse. You're actually damaging the item itself. Kamash Malon, that you're potter there as well. How do you see that from our case? The hacha command the chafer ba boyos shichin umaristam. Shchita is like digging boyos shichin umaris. As Rashi says, shchita niris v'nichras. You can tell it. You can see it v'nikeres. you could see that there was a change made. Even though he had a time of Zika Ba'alma, he took away a wind, but there's still a physical change there. And therefore, from there you have a good raya that Chayfer, Masicha Demaya, Shich Demaya is really put. Period. Now we have the next halacha in the Brisa. What if a Balchayv came and seized the animal before the Nizik had a chance? It doesn't matter if the Chayv preceded the damage or if the damage preceded the Chayv. Loy asa v'loy klum. It's nothing, and the Nizik can take it back. Why? Because there's a special shibud on the animal to pay back the nizik. Frek the Gemara Akash. Bishlama hizik acheloi chav nizik and kad. I understand if the shibud of the damage came first. So therefore, it's logical that the nizik should have precedence to collect from this animal. If the money was owed and there's already a shibud on this animal to pay back the malva, why in the world should the nizik have kedima over the malva to collect when in fact the liability of the malva came first? Zoktam even more. Bafilu hizik acheloi chav. And even if you're going to claim to me that in the case of where the damage came first, Balchoiv Kodem, the Balchoiv comes first, Shemamina, you'll see from here. So Rashi is Vafilu Hidakach Lechav, Nami Balchoiv Kodem. Even if the damage came first, still the Balchoiv should be first. Why? Litfisa, because he grabbed it. At the end of the day, yes, the shibud for the Hezek came first, and then the shibud alone came. But he was typhus. So Vafilu Hidakach Lechav, Balchoiv Kodem, because the Balchoiv seized it first. So why would you take it away from the Balchoiv and give it to the Nizik? Shemamina, and this is Bitmiya. Shemamina, are you telling me that Balchoiv Ma'ucher, Shekadem V'Gava, Ma Shegava, Loi Gava? Are you going to tell me that a later Balchoiv who came and seized something, are you going to tell me that you take it away from him? Are you going to tell me that even though he was typhus at first, are you claiming that you actually take it away from him? That's a machlokes. There's actually a machlokes, Zok Rashi and Ksubis. If a later Balchoiv comes but seizes the property from the loiva, are you telling me that you're going to take it away from him? So that means you're being poshed a shaila that the Gemara didn't have a resolution to him in Ksubis. Zok Loi. Really, if the Malva sees the ox, he gets to keep it. I want to correct myself. If a later Malva seized property, even though there was an earlier Malva, the later Malva gets to keep the property. But that's if there's two Malvas, one's earlier and one's later. But if there's a Malva and a Nizik, even if the Nizik came later and the Malva is first and the Malva was typhus, the Nizik still gets to take the animal away from the Malva. Why? Shiny Hasam, the Amr Lay, by the Nizik and the Malva, the Nizik could tell the Malva, Ilu Gabochava, if this whole story happened when you had the animal, would I not have taken it from you?
What?
Oh, that's such a gavaltic kasha. I'm so happy you asked that kasha. It's exactly what it's said. So I want to hold on a second. The high Turah, the Askan, the Turah, this ox that damaged me, I have a special right to collect from this animal, and therefore, even though you seized it, I can take it away. Okay, Gavaltik. Let's look at Toysus, who asks Moti's kasha. Tema, what do you mean? If it was by the Malva who seized the shore, and that's when it damaged me, well then also bedinche yigva shapasha b'shmirosai. Of course, if it happened by the Malva, I would get it. It's not the Malva, is the Mazik. V'yishloimar, the loikamar, all the Gemara means to say with that taina is a lakloimar, the ein guf hashar meshubad l'balchoiv k'moisho meshubad l'nizik shemishtal migufay. Since the Torah says by a short time it's mishtal migufay, it gives the nizik an extra special koyach in it over and above another shibud that will be on this animal. And that's really all the Gemara wants to bring out. but it's not literal that if it actually did the damage by the malva, that he would take it away, because that's technically not a right, because the malva would have been liable. So we've learned that there's a special connection. There's a special connection. Okay. Now, Marty asked, so what's the difference if there was a mother bedin? Because we just learned through this entire brisa before a mother bedin, which is the shibud that the Torah automatically gives the nizik, and the Torah is discussing, the Mishnah, the brisa is discussing the shibud that the Torah has given the nizik even before anything happens. But let's look now as to after Ahmad Bedin. Misha Ahmad Bedin, there Bezdin already has given it to the nizik. So therefore, machar ain't a machar. Because at that point, we all agree that it actually does belong to the nizik. So that's why all this changes. Because once there's a mother bedin, then Bezdin has already acted on it and has given the property to the nizik. So then therefore the mazik had no right to anything in it, and therefore nothing related to the mazik would have an impact. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. Tanu Rabbanan. This is a little bit complicated, but not that complicated. Shor Shova Masayim. You have two auctions that are each worth $200, and Shar A, Shtois Shar B, the Chalvaboy b'chamishim zuz. Now Shar B is only worth 150 zuz. The damage is 50 zuz, which means the Chatzi Nezek payable would be 25 zuz. But the Shibach, the animal that was injured, went up in value. It went up in value. The Amad al Arba Meyasuz. And now it's worth 400 zuz. So I damaged an animal worth 200 zuz, and now it's worth 400 zuz. So why should I pay you? Why should I pay you? I'm going to get there. But first, I want to focus on this line. Why should I pay you? You're not down. You're up. I'll tell you why I might have to pay you. If you wouldn't have, if I wouldn't have done this damage, so now you have a counterclaim. Never mind. The damage is 50. Now the damage is 200, right? So Rashi actually discusses, 400 to 800. So I've lost 400. So you owe me 200. Right, you owe me 200, right. So Rashi actually presents both sides of the claim. Halacha l'maisa, the claim that we're discussing is the mazik's claim. I don't want to pay you. I don't want to pay you because you didn't suffer a loss. But Rashi brings down as a lishna achrina, maybe there's a claim that you should pay me more. Rashi and Tosfos both end up rejecting that pshat because there's no havamina that you should be able to claim from me more. At best, it's only a grum. But it doesn't fit into the Gemara either to learn that we're discussing a claim from the nizik onto the mazik. So the halacha l'maisa, what the Brisa is talking about is a claim that the mazik makes to the nizik. Look, you're still ahead. What do you want from me? The halacha is noitzin kashas hanezik. The malva, the mazik has to pay $25 kashas hanezik, because the mazik can't say, well, look, it's worth 400 anyway. No, he can't say that. At the time of the damage, you did damage of 50, you have to pay 25. Okay. What about if it was kichesh? What if the animal went down in value? So if it went down in value, so let's have a look at Rashi. Kichesh anizik, Rashi adds machmas hamaka. The animal now became worth less because of the makkah. So now instead of it being worth 150, it started to devalue even more. V'nira achshav v'zekoi gadol yoser mitchila b'shas hanezik. So now it's not worth 150 anymore. It's further deteriorated. Now it's worth 100. So the question is Chatzi Nezek 25 or Chatzi Nezek 50?
6 months ago, whatever. The fact is that the Hezek was what made it go down.
So you're suggesting for sure that the mazik should be chayiv to pay or pater to pay? Chayiv. Okay, so the Gemara says kashas hamad b'din. The Brisa agrees with you. So noisin loikafi nezek shabshas hamad b'din, meaning the mazik is liable for that further deterioration. The Gemara could explain why, and this is really what Mati said, is kind of the Torah chavirbe. The horn of your mazik animal is still buried in my animal, continually causing the damage, which is what Mati said. All of this loss, even though it didn't happen at that instant, but it's all a loss that's still caused by the original shtoisik. Because it's not. The stoicing did it. The stoicing is what deteriorated the animal's value. So Amar, now let's analyze this. A shibach mazik. What if if the animal of the mazik went up, the Amar al dalid meyos, and it went up to dalid meyos. I'm sorry, shibach comma. If the animal went up, right, the mazik pays kishas hanezik, which is what we said earlier. In other words, he pays the 25. He doesn't have to pay the 200. Mani, who is this going according to? So tomorrow Rabbi Shmuel, it must be going according to Rabbi Shmuel, the Amar Bal Chayfu, v'zuzu the Masikle. I'm only a Bal Chayf. Now, if you hold that you're like Rabbi Kiva, that right away the animal of the mazik belongs to the. I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. Actually, I skipped. I'm sorry. Shibach mazik. I skipped the second half of the price. Shibach mazik. What if the animal of the mazik went up and it was originally worth 200 and now it's worth 400, as Rashi says? Then noisin loy kishas hanezik. How much money are you entitled to? So the question is, what is the maximum limit of the amount of money that the nizik can claim from the mazik? If the animal was originally worth 200, then you would say that the maximum money owable to the nizik would be 200 because it's migufay. But what if after it did the damage till amad bedin, now this animal is worth 400, so maybe the liability goes up to 400 now. We're talking about obviously a case where it would have been more than the 200, and the question is, can the nizik say, I'm claiming more because the value of your shor went up? So the halach is kashas hanezik. Why is it kashas hanezik? I already, by mistake, read the line of the Gemara. It's because we look at, Rabbi Shmuel says, we look at the nizik not like a partner, like Rabbi Kiva said. He's just someone who's collecting from the owner. So the collection, he never had ownership in the ox. So the ox had a value of 200 at the time of the damage. So therefore, that's the maximum amount that you could collect from. Kichesh, what if the ox and the mazik went down? So then, once again, if you follow through on the logic, you should look at the shas hamodabedin. You should look at the shas hanezik. But there it says kashas hamodabedin, which is mashma that the nizik does own the ox, and the mazik can tell the nizik, it's not my fault, it's your ox. Your ox went down in value. But you are already fully paid the moment that nizik happened because you got ownership in my ox, right? So we have a stira minei obey, because when it goes up, it's kashas and nezik. When it's kichesh kashas hamadavadin, that sounds like we're giving the mazik an unfair advantage. So Amar Mar shebach mazik noichin kashas and nezik. Mani Rabbi Shmuel. That's consistent with Rabbi Shmuel. In other words, the nizik doesn't benefit from the fact that the animal went up in value. But I'm a seifa kichesh kashas hamadavadin, meaning the nizik does suffer because the animal went down in value. Also, no Rabbi Kiva, Reisha Rabbi Shmuel, Sefer Rabbi Kiva. That's not a logical approach. Zakhtama, you're right. Loi Kula Rabbi Kiva. In fact, it's all Rabbi Kiva. So if it's all Rabbi Kiva that the nizik owns it, so if it went up, why doesn't the nizik have a right to collect more money because it's his ox? It didn't stam go up in value after the animal did the damage. The mazik invested money and fattened up his ox, and that's what it became worth. There, the nizik can't say I'm entitled to that. That's the mazik's investment. So if it's speaking where the mazik is the one responsible for increasing the animal in value, reisha. Let's look at the reisha. Shivach, if it went up, and it went up to 400 zuz, noisin loy kishas hanezek, you give him kishas hanezek. Frek the Gemara, if it's speaking where it only went up in value because the mazik pumped it up in value, do I need a brisa to tell me that if the mazik put the money in, the mazik gets the money out? I don't need a brisa to tell me that. That's very, very simple.
The Nizik was the one that was.
Shibach v'amar al dalad mezuz. If it went up and now it's worth 400 zuz, meaning I only have to pay chati nezek of the $50, and I can't say I don't want to pay. Right? I can't say I don't want to pay. If it only went up because the nizik increased in the value, thank you, Mati. If it only increased because the nizik increased in the value, the nizik increased in the value, so the mazik should walk free. That shouldn't exonerate the mazik from paying. Amar Papa, you're right. Ratio mishkachas law, being the pitma petumi, being the shvacham amela. The ratio, in fact, is actually referring to both cases. Now, if it's pitma petumi, it's poshut that the mazik can't use that increase in value to reduce his liability. But actually, the halacha would be the same if the animal went up by its own, because it just says shibech. It doesn't say what shibech, no matter what. So even if it went up on its own, still the mazik cannot get out of paying the 25. The intrach la'ashmina, and we need the price to tell us the heicha the shavcham mela. If it went up on its own, nevertheless the mazik cannot say that I'm not paying. Noishin like a shasa nezek. The mazik still has to pay the 25, which is half of the $50 damage that it did. But seifa in the case of the mazik fattening up his animal, loy mishkachas law elakishapit. There, the mazik could only claim that you don't have a right to it, according to Rabbi Kiva, if and only if he was the one who paid for the increase in value. Kachash, if it went down, kichesh. You have an article, right? How do you pronounce it? Kachash. Kachash, if it went down, kishas hamod bedin. You look at it, kishas hamod bedin, and now the mazik's animal is worth less. Freik the Gemara, kachash mach masmai. Oh, talk about the nizik. Okay, thank you for correcting me. Kachash, if it went down, if the nizik's animal went down, you pay kishas hamod bedin. Okay, zok to Gemara, which means that you look at the whole animal, and which means the damages will be less, right? The damages will be less. So zok to Gemara, kachash mach masmai. What caused it to go down in value? If it went down in value because the nizik continued to work with the animal, which further weakened the animal, and that caused additional loss.
Went down.
Oh, the carcass went down. I'm sorry, you're right. The carcass went down. So let's say it was originally worth 200, and at the time of the damages, it was worth 150, and now it got further degraded, and now it's only worth 100. So I have to pay chati nezik of 100. I have to pay 50 instead of 25. So Frag the Gemara, if the reason why it went down in value is because the nizik worked with it, let the mazik say, lay malay, I don't understand. At mikachshis, you caused it to lose another $50 in value, not me. I have to pay. I'm going to pay half of the $50 in value that I caused it to drop in value. If you caused it to drop further in value, that's not my fault. Omer Ravashi, the kachash machmas maka, the original wound was deteriorating the animal, and that led to it becoming worth now even less. And therefore, the nizik has a strong claim to the mazik. The Omer lay kaina the turach kavirbe. The horn of your animal is still there doing damage. And therefore, you should be liable for that additional loss. Okay, gewaltig. Zog the Mishnah weiter. Shar shavim asayim, a shar that was worth 200. Shonagach shar shavim asayim, that stoys another shar shavim asayim. Ve'ein ha-nevela yafaklum, and the nevela is not worth anything at all. So let's have a look at the pasuk that discusses how we settle the deal when there is a case of damages. So the pasuk says, "V'chiyigoy shar is a shar re'eu." You sell the live animal, and the nizik takes 50%, and the mazik takes 50%. So the pasuk seems to be telling us that we split the live and the dead animal. We split the value of the live animal and the dead animal. Now we have to figure out, since it has to be chati nezek. Let's say the live animal is worth $10,000, and the dead animal was only worth $500, and the damage is only $250. If we're splitting both, you're getting the nizik's making a fortune on. So, of course, this case must be speaking about a very specific case where, when you do this, it'll actually work out that it'll be chati nezek, right? So let's see how the Brash explains it.
You didn't touch cuts, so you end up with the whole. Right? If they're exactly, let's say, the same value.
If they were both same, exactly. You're exactly. So you end up with also. So we have to clarify what the case of the Torah is and what you do and when it applies. So Shor Messiah, Shanach Shor Messiah, Ve'ena Nevela Yafa Klum, and the Nevela is worth nothing. So the loss is $200. Amar Rab Meir, Zok Meir Al Zen Nemar Umachro is a Shor Achai v'Chatzotz Katzbay. They sell the live animal and they split it. I get 100, and the Nizik gets 100. So now the Nizik ended up with 100, which means he suffered a loss of 100. So that's Chati Nizik. The mace.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what we have to deal with. Rab Meir holds we ignore the second half of the pasuk. We're going to use the second half of the pasuk to teach us a different halacha. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, that doesn't make sense. V'chein halacha kayemes. That is the halacha. Umachris hashar achai v'chazos kasbay. So yeah, you satisfy that part of the pasuk. But as Mati asks, v'loy kiyamto v'gam hameis yechton. So what happened to that? So let me tell you what the case of the Torah was. So according to me, the case of the Torah was simple case. Shor Shav Masayim, Shanach Shor Shav Masayim, it's worthless, and the Chati Nezek is by splitting the value of the surviving animal. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Part of the cheshbon is selling the Sarah mace. So now we're going to have to figure out a case where after you split everything, it works out that the Nizak got paid for half his damages. So let's look at this case. Zeh Shor Shav Masayim, Shanach Shor Shav Masayim, but Vanavela Yofa Chamishim Zuz. So now the damage is 150, which means Chati Nezek would be 75. Now figure out. So let's have a look. If you have a nevela that's worth 50, then half of the nevela is 25. If you have a shor that's worth 200, half of it is 100. So each guy walks away with 125. The damage is 150, right? And I walk away with 125, which means I lose $75. I started off with an ox that was worth $200. Now I have money, 125. I lost 75, which is perfect because 75 is half of 150. Right, Stims? Okay. Gewaltig. Tanur Rabbanan. Shor Shavim Masayim Shenagach Shor Shavim Masayim. Vanevela Yofa Chamishim. Chamishim Zuz. Zenoit L'Chatzi Achai V'Chatzi Ameis. V'Zenoit L'Chatzi Achai V'Chatzi Ameis. V'Zeu Shor Amar B'Torah Divi Rabbi Yehuda. Right, as we just learned. Rabbi Meir Omer. Ein Zehu Shor Amar B'Torah. That's not the case that the Torah is referring to. El Shor Shavim Masayim Shenagach L'Shor Shavim Masayim. V'Ein Nevela Yofa Klom. Al Zen Amar Umacher Es Shor Hachai V'Chatzos Kasb. Ella frekt moti mani mekayim v'gam esameis yechtum. How is Reb Meir going to understand the second half of the pasuk? Zok the Gemara, he understands it as saying something else. Chash shepichsu misa. What do you pay half of? You pay half of the damage that was caused only by the fact that my shor killed your shor. Machzin b'chai. So the damage, so Gamas HaMeis Yachton is saying the Gamas HaMeis, the damage is caused exclusively by the Mazik's animal, killing the Nizik's animal. That damage is split in half. And where do you extract the value for that half? B'chai. So if you think about it, there's no difference. They're both agreeing to the same thing. Michti, Ben Reb Meir, Ben Reb Yehuda, Hai Meir versus V'chamisha Shak. Either way you figure it out, he's going to walk away with 125 and suffer a loss of 75. So what's the difference? How you're touching it? There doesn't seem to be enough kamina lalacha. Hi chamisha meivesem shakel meivesem chamisha shakel. Because according to Reb Meir, what happened? According to Reb Meir, you have two animals that was worth each 200. One damaged the other animal, and it's now worth 150. No, I'm talking in Rabbi Yehuda's case. In Rabbi Yehuda's case, it was worth 150, right? So how much will I owe you? I'm sorry, it's only worth 50. So the damage is 150. So therefore, I pay you 75. So no matter how you learn the psukim, in the case of Rabbi Yehuda, everybody agrees that the loss to the nizik will be 75, but he'll be paid 75. So what's enough kamina lalach? It's not just a machlokes of what the pasuk is talking about. It has to have enough kamina lalach.
Mayor, the nevela is not worth anything.
No, Reb Meir says that's the case that the pasuk is talking about, but that doesn't mean he's arguing lahalacha in the case, right? We're trying to find the case where there would be a difference in how much the payment is between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Otherwise, they're arguing about semantics. Really, they agree just how you look out of the pasuk. Usually, if they're arguing, there'll be a nafkamina lalacha in a specific case where Rabbi Yehuda will have a position A and Rabbi Meir will have position B. So Zakmar Babi now. So where is your halacha l'maisa difference? Rabbi Meir specifically said that I only have to pay half the losses up until the time of death, right? So I have to pay half the loss that the death cost. So therefore, I don't have to pay if the nevela gets devalued further. Rabbi Meir said the nizik has to absorb the loss if until he gets paid, then the animal continues to degrade in value. The nizakava, Rabbi Yehuda saw a plastabel the mazakava. The loss of the nevela, if it further degrades, the mazik has to get a part of it, and that's why he says that you sell both, and however much you get for it, they split. So at the end of the day, if the animal of the nizak goes down in value after it got killed, the mazik's going to have to absorb part of that loss because he's going to be taking part of the proceeds of the sale of that animal. While according to Meir, he has nothing to do with the sales of that animal. Okay, Zok to Gemara, Amalei Abaye, are you telling me in Cain, Matzinil Rabbi Yehuda, you're going to have a case according to Rabbi Yehuda that Tam is Chamer Mimuad. Tam is Chamer Mimuad because in a muad we only look at the time of death and that's what I pay. Yet by a Tam, I'm muchuv to take on additional liability of losses to the nevela after the damage occurred. And we know muad has to be more Chamer than Tam.
Why not? Does the mazik gain or not?
The Gemara is going to discuss that as well. That's a very good argument. What if it goes up? So Zok Gemara v'chitema hachanami. If you're going to say enechanami, so what's the big deal? So in this dimension, in this way, there's a chomer in tam over mud. V'chitema hachanami kedetnan, like we learned. Rabbi Yehuda Omer tam chayiv umud pater. There was a case in Shor Shanach Valdei. I don't know what the case is. I didn't have time to look it up. But there's actually a case where if there's a certain shmir, Rashi was thinking where you watch it a shmir pchusa, the yotz of a hizik. So there a tam you would be chayiv for, and the muad you would be pater for. So why is it such a big difficulty to say that there are chumras that tam have overmoved? Zok more Emer the shamas leila Rabbi Yehuda in shmira. Dechsivi kroi. Maybe where does Rabbi Yehuda make a distinction? Where there's a certain chumrah by tam over muad is in what level of shmir you need, because there's psukim, I guess we'll see when we get up to there, there's psukim to show that maybe a short tam has a higher threshold of shmira that it requires. Maybe. But le'in tashlumin mishamet lei, where would you ever find anywhere that Rabbi Yehuda would say that the chiyuv of tashlumin could, in a certain dimension, be more chamer by tam than it is by muad? But Tanya we learned, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Yachol, you would have thought, Shor Shava Mona, Shenagach Shor Shava Chamet Shloim. What if a shor that was worth